I think if we know early on what an IA is, what your pole bar rights are, what's going to happen, the entire process, I would hope, it shows you it's hard to get this job, but you could lose it just as quick. It's really easy to lose it. The board doesn't know who you are. They just know what the city is accusing you or the department's accusing you of, right? So character means everything, right? You got to be genuine. How can an agency that I've devoted, or a city, right, that I've devoted so much of my time, I have a passion for this profession, just snap of a finger, right? Like, hey, potential misconduct.
Welcome back to the Marlon Marrache Show, Truth Behind the Badge. I think I've already, I keep always saying, I have a special guest. So today we say we have a special guest. All guests are special. I always say that to determine that I'm still trying to figure out whether or not there's like a first degree special guest or a second degree or third degree. But let's just say that all guests are special. So I definitely wanted to get that out of the way. However, today, my two guests that are here with me, it's a bit personal because what I've realized about doing this particular show that used to be the Internal Affairs State Police podcast over 2.5 years ago, and we did it for many, many reasons, but I think the main reason is because I get to go through this journey and meet some really, really genuine, really good people that have become my friends. And Sergio and Kasey have both become not just, I was not only a client, right, but we become friends to know that there's so much to gain out of an internal affairs story. And I'm here to tell you that everybody thought that when I started this podcast, it's like, Marlon, what are you doing? Who the hell wants to come in and air out your dirty laundry? And the light bulb hit about, hey, we can learn about discipline because you and I can agree, and I've said this so many times, that this is a topic by which it is not talked about enough at all whatsoever. As a matter of fact, it's very taboo in the law enforcement culture. So without further ado, I'm gonna introduce Sergio and Kasey and get into this really genuine first-time internal affairs story. And I say that because this actually, I got hired as an expert to help out both Kasey and Sergio. And but before we get started with all this internal affairs, we're gonna ask all these questions. We want to know, right? I'm giving away my age here. Inquiring minds want to know that Sergio did UPS, like working for UPS in South Central, right? It used to be South Central. Now it's South Los Angeles.
Right.
Did it help you when you said, you know what, I want to become a cop? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it did. I mean, the area, right, it's a little rough. I grew up in a rough area as well. I grew up in Linwood.
Okay.
So familiar with those areas. So I was like,
shout out to Linwood in the house, huh?
Yeah.
Well, what was that like?
Well, I would say people didn't really like the cops, right? I didn't know for what reason, right? I was young. But I did see a lot of violence, a lot of things that I'm like, well, I could choose a side, right?
Right.
I could be a good guy, or be a product of my environment.
Now, I do know that your brother and yourself run a towing company with your father. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Right? And you've been doing, when was the first time you actually towed a car?
Like actually helped my dad?
Well, I know you probably didn't, you definitely helped, but you probably didn't have a license, but I'm sure you did all the chaining and all that stuff, right?
I was probably about 13.
Really?
13 years old, yeah.
Wow. Now, I would imagine you probably would have thought to yourself, or maybe there was somewhere in your journey, if you will, that, hey, we're going to take over this company or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Well, that's good. Well, thanks for coming.
Of course.
We're going to talk later about how we met. And we'll get right to it. But, of course, Kasey, thanks for showing up. And we want to know about this conditional offer that you had with the Federal Bureau of Investigations when you decided, what was after college and you went to law school, right?
Right. So I went to law school, and then after you graduate law school, you kind of have to decide what you're going to do.
Okay.
And I thought, well, should I be a probation officer or should I go into the FBI? So I applied to the FBI, and simultaneously I applied to the DA's office in San Bernardino. And they came through first, and that's where I ended up. Happily, I might add. I was happy at the DA's office, but this is a calling, so.
Well, let me ask you this, as we're having this conversation now and we're reflecting, do you at any point think to yourself, God, what would it have been like as an FBI agent?
No.
No,
Not
right?
like even a little bit.
Not at all.
Not even a little.
Look, Sergio, you're an active officer. I really appreciate. Another thing I forgot to mention is we don't get many guests who have shared an internal affairs investigation by which you were the subject, right? You were the accused employee. I've only had one before you. Shout out to Chris Hendricks. Chris, every time someone says, hey, if you want to go watch one of the 270 guests that I've had thus far, I always refer to Chris because, Chris, your story resonates not just with me, but with a lot of the audience. So I really appreciate you wanting to share something that's very, very important. And in the end, we're going to get a lot of information. We're going to get a lot of education out of this. And hopefully, whoever's watching or listening, you know, I can tell you right now, I think you told me best when you got a hold of me through Instagram and DMs. You said, you know what, I feel like I'm not alone. You remember that?
Yeah, that's correct.
You know, it almost seems like it seems like it's happening a lot everywhere, but in reality, we are talking about a very small population. What do you think?
No, I agree. Yeah, when I reached out to you, and you started, talking to me about what you do and how you do it, and I started becoming familiar with other people that are, met some great friends through this process.
Yeah.
And we're all kind of going through the same thing. And I was like, okay, well, yeah, I'm not alone.
Well, look, 2016, you went into the academy. I ask my guests this questions all the time. When you were there, when did anyone ever walk in from internal affairs and said, hey, hi, we're from internal affairs. Let me explain to you what the process is. Did it happen in the academy that you can recall some entity that kind of explained you what the process was?
No, not anyone from internal affairs. Just instructors would walk in and, what we knew at the time was, hey, you don't want to find yourself in an IA, right? That's all we knew. It was like the boogeyman. And after that, it'd just go out the door, right? Because you're so focused on your LDs or what you have to do to pass, right?
That's right. Got to get my LDs and I got to graduate.
And in the academy, I think you would never think you'd find yourself fighting for your job, right? You try to do your best.
Right.
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 So.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because my next question was going to be, during probation, did your corporals or FTOs, right? Did they tell you about IA? And I'm sure if they did, it's probably like, hey, stay away from those guys. They're the Rat Squad or Blue Falcons or whatever.
It's interesting because, my agency, IA was never really looked at through a negative lens. However, it was somewhere where you didn't want to go, right? It was like, hey, if you find yourself there, call your rep, and that was the end of it, right?
Right. I guess a better way to ask the question is, what was the overall sentiment of internal affairs in your agency? Because I'm sure it's very negative.
Yeah, no, it's definitely don't go, don't find yourself in that office, and if you do, be careful what you say. Right. Call your rep immediately, talk to your union president before you go in there alone, because it could go south really quick.
Right. Kasey, let me ask you this. You've been doing administrative police misconduct for how long?
Since 2011.
Okay, so it's been a while.
Yeah.
Do you think that we are doing a disservice to young officers, starting from recruit cadets, even less than 3 years on, by not letting them know about the process? What do you think?
I think it could be explained better. You don't know what you don't know until you're there. And because there are so many different levels of investigation, it's almost like it's hard for an agency to say that, well, this is a directed memo and this is some places call it an inquiry, right?
Right.
Whatever that is. And then this is a formal IA. Oh, and here we might be going to an outside investigator. I think it's a lot of information for someone who's still trying to figure out the basics of the penal code.
When you first started representing law enforcement officers, did you get the impression that these clients of yours didn't really know the process? Or were they spooked? I guess that's probably a good way to describe it. What do you think?
It honestly depends on the agency, and it depends on the tenure of the officer. I have agencies that, I rarely go and we have no IAs.
Okay.
Because they just handle it at a low level, informal investigation. Someone has to be arrested for domestic violence.
Got it.
Okay.
It's got to be pretty serious.
Yeah. Then on the other hand, I have agencies that I am there every single day,
Right.
once a week,
So
easily.
a lot has to do with the leadership and the culture.
Yes, and I think that agencies that have dedicated internal affairs divisions find work. Not going to lie about that. I also think that depending on your assignment, you may be more in a proactive assignment, so you're going to get more complaints, and then you become accustomed to getting those complaints, and you know the drill. There are people who I have represented multiple times, and I feel like I'm their like a security blanket, like an emotional support attorney, because they know what they're doing. They don't really need me to prep them. They've been here before, and I'm just a second set of eyes or someone to kind of walk them through things. And other times, people are freaked out, especially I think as they get into maybe like the later quarter of their career, and they're wondering, how did I make it this far and never get in trouble, but now hear something so serious?
Okay, I got so many questions. I can start with the buzzword transparency. God, every day I think about that word. And by the way, I think that we're very transparent with the public. I do. I think that we do a good job letting the public know about, critical incidents and, there's a homicide in a small community. We're spot on. We let them know. We get a PIO. We'll do news, conference and all that good stuff. But I kind of feel like we're not that transparent amongst ourselves. And I say that because a lot of guests tell me about their stories, and I've met and traveled, right? I've taught up and down the state of California, where I think to myself, well, shouldn't we be transparent? So I guess my question to you is, how transparent are we in terms of like letting an officer know, like, hey, you're kind of in trouble? And you think we can do a better job in that? I guess that's a better question.
I think it depends on the point of the investigation. I have agencies that are, I would think, very transparent. Here's the complaint that came in against you. Here's every piece of evidence that we have, every video, every report. Tell us what's going on. I have other agencies where, despite asking for materials in advance, we get sandbagged.
Yeah.
So it just depends.
It just depends. It's the only thing I remember in law school. It depends. It's the only thing I remember out of my misery of friggin' all these years. With that being said, Sergio, let me ask you this. Why do you think internal affairs gets such a bad rap? How come there's this negative stigma attached to internal affairs, considering you've been through one that caused you, it'd be an understatement saying that it cost you a lot of grief. I know it cost you a lot, and we're going to talk about that later on, but why do you think that we get, not we, well, it is, we're all in this together, but why does internal affairs get such a bad reputation?
I think it gets a bad reputation because, like you said, the transparency, right? You have some IAs that they'll tell you everything up front, and then others it's potential misconduct, and then you're like, what? Like, what does that even mean, And and then you find yourself like trying to like, are they out to get me? You know, your mind starts going in all kinds of directions, right? And then whether they terminate you, suspend you, whatever the case is, you're not going to forget that feeling. So then you go down and you talk to, you know, the patrol officers, and you're like, man, it sucks.
Right.
You know, you don't know if they're out to get you, or you start thinking all kinds of things.
Right.
And I think that just grows, you know, throughout the years. It's
Right.
grown.
Is there anything that we can do to minimize that? Or is there a solution? I guess that's a better question. What do you think?
I mean, maybe just, you know, if whoever's in charge of an IA, just telling them like, hey, take any personal issues that you might have with this person, or you might have heard rumors or hearsay, you know, and especially in smaller agencies, everybody knows everybody's business.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Even the maintenance worker.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Your IA.
So, you know, when you have that issue and you have an internal affairs sergeant that might have, you know, hears these things, well, I feel it kind of does play a role, you know, the decision making, right?
Yeah.
And we'll talk about it later on how I feel that kind of the seed was planted in my case.
Right, right. But let me ask you this, though. You have, in your academy, you have classmates that have gone to other agencies, right?
Yes.
So what's the sentiment with your classmates when, you know, I'm sure you guys talk, they're like, dude, I got an IA or something, you know, it's like the boogeyman.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And they were probably never informed. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I talked to a few. I mean, I think everybody knew what happened. You know, everybody was kind of shocked. But they're just kind of, you know, the IAs that they go through, it's you know, either use of force or something, you know, nothing. And they seem to be handled pretty well on their end, you know, but like Kasey said, right, every agency's different.
Yeah. Would you agree with me if I were to say that, I know you're coming up on 10 years, if 10 years ago, let's just say here you are fresh out of the academy, if someone came in your orientation, let's say laterals, that's a perfect example. There's, I don't know, 10 laterals into an agency, that part of that orientation is for somebody, I don't care who it is, I don't care if it's the sergeant, certainly, you know, the attorney who does these, that represents the officer, but somebody to explain, hey, when someone walks in the front lobby and says, hi, I want to make a complaint against Sergio and Marlon, and the sergeant comes out with his notepad and does the intake, someone should walk you through that whole process. What do you think?
Oh, I agree 100%. I think if we know early on what an IA is, what your pole bar rights are, what's going to happen, the entire process, I think, I would hope, you know, it shows you it's hard to get this job, but you could lose it just as quick. It's really easy to lose it. And I think that the more you go into this with that knowledge, you're going to be a little bit more cautious. You're going to want to read policy. You're going to, you know, just to save yourself a grief, you know, in a rough road if you find yourself in an IA.
Kasey, in your 15 plus years you've been doing this, have you ever been invited to a police department to talk in orientation or to discuss the IA process?
I have, and I've done it. And I'm always grateful when agencies ask me to do that. And I've additionally created a course, just like a 45-minute training for supervisors, how not to violate my clients' rights in the field. And I love when the chiefs say, hey, come out, come do that, please, thank you. We appreciate that. I'm always willing to do that because it saves everyone a little heartache.
Do we do that? Do we do that often, or could we do it more?
Oh, we could definitely do it more. You know, and I'm going to tell you, it's chief dependent. The chiefs that don't want to deal with me have me come in early, right? Because then we have a good relationship. We can try and work things out maybe just by having a conversation. They get my perspective, and I think that it's a great showing to their troops. Hey, we're not afraid of the process. Education is good for everyone. Here's the person that I would go against in an adversarial hearing. She's going to come in and talk to you. I love that. I'm grateful for that. I don't get asked enough to do that.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to ask you about that buzzword. Well, it's not a buzzword, but adversarial. Do you feel that it has been adversarial?
Oh, I've definitely had adversarial hearings.
Well, I guess a better question, let me paint this picture for you. Let's just say today you get a new client from a new police department.
Sure,
Right?
I did on the way here.
Yeah, there you go. Hi, my name is Kasey.
Yeah.
You know,
Hello.
thank you. I appreciate you for
Welcome to Kasey Law Group.
Exactly. Thanks for asking for my services. But let's take that for example. Would you want the chief to call you and say, "Hey, can you come in and kind of educate and inform my rank and file about the process?" Or are we under the pre-notion that it's already adversarial?
No, again, I think it's chief dependent. If where I see chiefs that are willing to do that are chiefs that have been around a while and like having a good non-adversarial relationship with the labor attorney. I will give you an example. We were talking about him before we started. Baldwin Park Chief. Every time I go to that station, he is pleasant. He is welcoming. Here's your room for you to meet with your clients. No problems. Maybe one of the nicest people. We've had great conversations in Skelly's and even before Skelly's and work stuff out. The former Cathedral City chief and I had a great relationship. Those things make a difference,
Yeah.
a huge difference.
Yeah.
But I have also, had police chiefs that want no relationship. And maybe that's because they know that down the road we're going to maybe butt heads.
That's right.
But that's never my first choice. My
Right.
first choice is non-adversarial, best interests of my client.
Yeah.
Like how do we fix this for both sides? That's a last resort
Yeah.
as far as I'm concerned.
Well, for the record, the chief from Baldwin Park is an ex-LAPD alum, just like me. So, shout out to Chief Bob. I'm going to get you in here one day, and you couldn't ask for a better person, a better man. He's very decorated, and I think the world of Chief Lopez. With that being said, let's move on, man. Let me ask you this, Sergio. Do you think the job of an internal affairs investigator is to protect cops? What do you think? And while you're thinking, I want the audience to know that you're answering all these questions because you went through an internal affairs investigation. So if I would have had you as a guest, you wouldn't have known anything about internal affairs because you never had an IA.
Yeah, I never had one, so it's a little difficult. But
Well, what do you think though? It's an interesting question.
Yeah, it is. I would say it's probably split down the middle,
Okay.
right? Because they also have to be transparent. Depending on the IA, they also have to be transparent with the public, right? They have to definitely show the public that like, hey, we're doing what we need to do, and us as officers, right? We have to police ourselves at some point, right? If we know we did wrong, we made our bed, we gotta lay in it, right?
Yeah,
So-
it's the necessary evil.
Right, exactly. So I'm kind of split. With my experience, my IA, my sergeant was really transparent with me.
Right.
Kept me in the loop, and I was like, I could respect that because he was honest, transparent, and he just held it down the way he was supposed to.
But he was not your investigator.
He wasn't my investigator.
Yeah, we'll get into that as to why he wasn't your
Yeah,
investigator.
well, he was, and then he suddenly
Yeah.
didn't become my IA sergeant.
If you can do me a favor and twist that mic box. Here, I'll help you. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. A little bit more. More. And then, there you go. Perfect. And you too, Kasey. I don't like that Marlon Marrache looking sideways.
Oh.
There you go. There.
Okay,
Keep
yeah.
going. Keep going. And a little bit more. Perfect. Okay. The reason why I ask is because I feel as though that we can all agree we don't want bad actors and bad apples.
Right. Yeah.
So someone's going to have to investigate them. Yeah, you would prefer to be your own. I get that. It's the necessary evil. But I feel as though sometimes that when I ask that question, a lot of people jump and say, well, yeah, I suppose I want to protect them, but, I used to ask that a lot to when I used to teach, because you don't want to say yes because you're going to say, well, yeah, I want to protect cops. I want to protect good cops. But if you say yes and you go, well, congratulations, here's your next, El Chapo human trafficking case, right? And you're like, well, I thought your job as an IA investigator is to protect cops. No, it's to protect the process.
Yeah.
Which goes back to the first question, Kasey, I'm going to ask is that, do you think, what do you think in terms of like what the role is?
I think that the role of the internal affairs investigator is to find out the truth. However,
It has been your experience.
it has been my experience that people work backwards, and I hate that. And you can see it a mile away, real honestly. And sometimes it's political, sometimes it's officer specific, sometimes it's, hey, we don't like the conduct, so we're going to pile it on so that if you do fight this, you're fighting, multi allegations, almost like the kitchen sink approach. I would love to feel that everyone who's put into internal affairs is put there for the right reason. Some of my favorite internal affairs investigators have gone through what Sergio went through. Mm-hmm. So they look at it through a lens of, I have to do a really good job here and be super fair because I know how this feels.
Yeah. Well, hold that thought, because my next question to you is, if I put you in a room today, right now, and I gave you the podium, in a room full of sergeants, and they're getting ready to begin their tour of internal affairs right now, what's the one thing you want them to know about that job?
It isn't easy. Mm-hmm. It's not easy. Be fair, be transparent. It's their decision. It could affect someone's livelihood. The decision they make could have a huge effect on someone's livelihood. Mm-hmm. So, like Kasey's saying, right? Like, it's unfortunate, what I went through, mm-hmm. but the experience, I wouldn't change it for the world, because if I ever, promote or whatever the case is, I know what the feeling is. Yeah. So I could see it through a different lens.
If I put you in a room full of sergeants right now, they're getting ready to begin their tour in internal affairs, what's the one thing you want them to know about that job?
Oh my gosh, it's the easiest thing. Do not start investigating internal affairs differently than you would investigate a regular crime. I see IAs written like English papers with flowery words and all kinds of adjectives that you would never see in a report narrative for a crime. Why do internal affairs investigations start looking like theses as opposed to a straightforward, here are the facts and that's it? That is a pet peeve of mine. Mm-hmm. Another pet peeve of mine that I would tell these sergeants is have an idea of what confirmation bias is. I asked an investigator the other day, who was a detective, mm-hmm. if he understood what that was, and he had no idea. And to me, that is something that you should understand as an internal affairs investigator and as a regular detective, that you're not trying to prove you're right about something. You're trying to get the facts so that someone can make a finding.
Has it been your experience that, because you've been doing this for quite some time, has it been your experience that these IA investigators that you've dealt with lack experience?
I mean, I've personally never been to an IA school, so I don't know what they are taught at IA school, but I will tell you that I find the best investigators have experience doing all different types of investigations, and it's really no different than applying the elements as you would to a crime. So it baffles my mind when we start treating it differently.
You're being so nice. I like that.
I am being nice. I have a lot to say.
I'm kind of guiding. I know you have a lot to say. I'm going to help you.
I'm trying not
I'm going to help you out. I'm going to help you out.
All out.
Yeah, I'm going to help you out because I'm guiding you there, because it seems to me like what you're trying to say is, I'll say it for you, yeah, hell yeah, they lack investigative experience. I don't think I've met, and I'm being critical here, for When I say medium to small size agencies, I'm probably going to even put it to 200. That's like threshold to me. Maybe less. Let's go 150, 100. Guarantee you that whoever's working IA doesn't have investigative experience. And I think that's where we missed. I think that's where we missed the ball right there. You know, we're missing that particular gap. And what I mean by that gap is, well, hold on a second. You just work patrol for like 5 years. Granted, I get it. You know, you respond to supervisor's request, you know, for a traffic stop or a service call. But do you really know how to investigate? No any different than a robbery or a homicide detective? What do you think?
I wish that they would investigate it like those investigators do, because a lot of these investigations are complex. And I've been surprised and seen, you know, internal affairs investigators do amazing job on one case. And then on the next case, it's like they forgot how to do it. And I don't know. I think that as an investigator, you should want someone to be the best at what they're doing in this particular assignment. I really do think that.
I talk about this too, and maybe I don't know if you experienced this, and any of you two can answer this. Is that, do you feel like sometimes that people go to internal affairs for self-serving reasons? Like, in other words, I'm going to work internal affairs because it's a feather in my cap, because I know I'm going to promote. Or, you know what, I get weekend. Hey, this is a great job. I work 4/10, you know, Monday through Thursday. I get Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off, or I get Saturday, Sunday, and Monday off. I work 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. Come 4 p.m., I'm out the door. And it works for the family, right? The wife, you know, the kids can help out. So my point is are you really there for the process?
I'm just kind of thinking about the different agencies that I represent. You know, lately I've been seeing a lot of outside investigators. Mm-hmm. So.
But someone's got to work IA.
Someone has to work IA.
And some are involuntold.
Some are voluntold.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And look, I don't want to sound like a hypocrite, because I'm going to tell you, and I've said this before, and I'll look at the camera and tell you the same thing. I was one of those too, where it did benefit me, right? Everybody wanted a Sergeant 2 spot, which is a rocker, you know, in my beloved LAPD. But it wasn't so self-serving for me, because I was in my second year of law school, and this is what I wanted to do. So I figured, you know what? This is probably the best way, because this is what I wanted to represent cops. And I've said this plenty of times, where I'll defend a cop way more than I'll prosecute one. And I got to tell you, man, my time in internal affairs, we had a lot of cases where I often think to this very day, I mean, 15, 16 years ago, when I used to take on this prosecutorial role, where I asked myself, you know, did it really belong at this level where we're looking at termination? So, but that's besides the point. I appreciate all that. Let me ask you one more question about internal affairs before we move on to a really good story that you're going to share with me. I wanted to know if I want you to chime in on this, and we'll start it this way. And I'll start with you, Kasey. Is quote unquote, the punishment's not the penalty, the punishment is the process. What do you think?
100%. It's hard, right? I didn't know Sergio before his case. And I find that I have clients who feel like Sergio is a perfect example. You know, he would reach out to me, I don't want to bug you. I don't want to bug you. Hey, man, no, it's my job. I'd rather have you ask me than lie awake, you know, at night. But yeah, they don't know what to expect. If they're on administrative leave, they feel isolated. It's like out of sight, out of mind, or you're told not to talk to them, or they're a pariah for some reason that, you know, and people you thought were your friends maybe aren't. So now I'm your best friend and you're, right, you know, big sis. And, you know, I get asked a lot, what's the percent of you being successful, of us winning? And I can't give guarantees, and right, I have no idea, right? I've won cases I probably should have, maybe not. And
You're
I
right.
lost cases that I was like, there's no way.
Oh,
There's
no.
just no way. How did I lose that? So the process is hard because, you know, when I was a prosecutor, I would prosecute people and then I would go about my day. But now, you know, this is my friend now.
Yeah.
And I'm responsible for him, but he has his own responsibilities, his family and his mortgage and all of that. And it is literally writing on what we do. So
It's an emotional roller coaster for you.
yeah.
Yeah.
And when you like your client and they become your buddy,
Yeah.
it's worse. It's really worse.
Right. But let me ask you this, though. Who do we hold accountable for the process being the punishment?
I don't know because I think that it could go a lot faster,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, that was something
Well,
that
well, okay,
really
well,
happened to Sergio was how long is this going to
Okay,
take?
well, I'm here to tell you, just like you, I've been doing this since 2008, right? And to this very day, I don't think the process has got any better in terms of length. Why does it take so long? And who do we blame for that? Who do we point fingers to say, you know what, we need to change that?
Sometimes it's caseload, right?
Okay.
Sometimes it's inability of the decision maker to make a decision.
I'll give you that.
I absolutely believe that, and I've personally experienced that where they're waiting for something to happen in their career
Right.
to make a decision over here,
Right.
right? Maybe some more permanency in their
Yeah.
spot
Yeah.
before they
Yeah.
drop the hammer. I don't know how, you know, to be honest, I don't also call and push too much because if you pass statute, then I'm cool. Right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, if we
Hey,
have
we're
a
done
33,
here,
yeah,
so
no, of
let's
course.
not remind
yeah.
them.
Oh yeah, I
that makes
love
sense.
I love a 3304 argument, of course.
Right.
I love that statute of limitations argument. Sergio, let me ask you this: you've been through the process. You know what? We're going to get into it. You close to 2 years, about a year and a half. Having to reflect on that year and a half you were waiting, is there anything the department could have done different?
I think probably been a little bit more transparent as to what was going on.
Okay.
Like how the initial complaint was or what it was. And then, you know, like the process, right? I think it was taking such a long time to get one answer. And like a month, I think it took one time to get a short answer. And that was the hard part, right?
Did anybody call you to update you?
The initial internal affairs sergeant would update me. Like I said, he was transparent with me, but then he was removed from the case. Or
Okay.
he was removed from the position.
And it got outsourced.
And yeah, and then ultimately got outsourced.
Oh, we'll talk about outsourcing a little bit. What I'd like to know is, did you feel like you were in the island by yourself?
I did, yeah. I felt like, you know, like Kasey was saying, it's you preach brotherhood, you preach sisterhood.
Then blue line.
Yeah, and then you find yourself in the darkest depths, you know, all by yourself. But again, you know, and this might sound crazy, but I'm so thankful that this happened to me because in that dark room, there was partners of mine who I wouldn't have expected to be there.
Yeah.
With a flashlight, like, hey man, like, I got your back. You know, I'll be there for you. So.
Yeah. Did you feel like some people did abandon you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the people that I least expected. You know, I was like, there's people that, you know, I would have. You call me at 2 a.m. because you know you're jammed up or something, you're stuck. I'll be there for you. You know,
Right.
Those are the ones that didn't get a call from, didn't get a text from. You know, it's the ones that, again, I was like, what? Like, you're calling me to check on me? Like we hardly even hung out. You know.
Yeah. I just feel as though, and maybe you can chime in on this, Kasey, when you do have that supervisor course that you have, and you know, with your clients being these police departments that you represent, where we can probably walk in and have a little bit more of quote unquote time is of the essence, right?
Yeah.
I really do feel that. In other words, okay, look, if we're going to allege serious allegations of misconduct, I get it. Okay, fine. You want to posture, take your position. They're lying. Get into that later on. You're accusing, a colleague, well, I shouldn't say a colleague, administration leadership is accusing a rank and file member of lying. That's pretty serious. I get that part. However, I just feel that we should set some goals, right? What do you think?
Some agencies do. They say we need to have some kind of turnaround by 90 days. I've seen that. But it's not every agency.
Okay.
And I think that's probably the exception. Oh, I did want to comment on Sergio's. It's probably Sergio specific. But do you remember when we went to his hearing and there were half of your department was there supporting
Yeah.
you? I've never seen that. In all the cases that I've tried, I've never seen members of the department standing in the hallway waiting to support someone.
And those are all the people that
That was
that would reach
awesome.
out. One guy specifically, we actually grew up in the same area. He's the one that kind of got the ball rolling for that. And I remember he called me and he tells me, "Hey man, I'm hearing rumors, but be honest with me. Are you guilty or are you innocent? Because if you're guilty, then I'm sorry. I'm not gonna vouch for you. But if you're innocent, I'll put everything on the line for you." And he did just that. There's guys that were due for promotion that went to that hearing, and they walked up to me and they're like, "Hey, this might cost me my promotion, but I'm here for you." Those are the guys and girls over there that I hold near and dear to my heart.
Yeah.
Because that's you're risking. We all know how it is, right? Oh, you're gonna back that guy up? Okay, I'm gonna document that for when promotions come up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was there. I remember I showed up.
Yeah.
I'm just dying to know what happened. So let's get the party started. And let me ask you this. Why did you call Kasey?
He had
Let's
to.
start there.
He had no choice.
I had no choice.
Well, hold on a second.
Well, I
You
didn't
didn't know
know,
her.
yeah.
You didn't know her. You didn't
They were
know her.
like, "Call Kasey."
You
I was like,
had
"Who's
no
Kasey?"
clue who.
Yeah, it was Kasey.
You had no clue who Kasey was.
I had no idea.
Right? Because you never had an eye.
I had
No one
yeah.
wants to know who Kasey is, I promise you. If you know who Kasey is, it means you're in trouble or you probably got in a shooting.
But see, and I get that part. See, that's my point. The point that I'm trying to drive is that you shouldn't have to be, oh God, what's the word I'm looking for? Like so mysterious to know who Kasey is. You know what I'm saying? It shouldn't be such a mystery.
Right.
That's part of this entire, this platform for internal affairs. Yeah, I know I rebranded it because I want to talk about other stuff, but it started with internal affairs.
Right.
Because of those reasons. It's because it shouldn't be this mysterious process. I should be able to call you, or you should be able to go to a police department during orientation and say, "Hey, look, if you get an internal affairs investigations, here's what it looks like. Here's what's going to happen, or here's what's not going to happen," whatever the case may be. And so it's not me. The audience is really, really dying to know, right? Inquiring minds want to know, what happened, man? How did this all go down?
Ready? So it was November of 2023. I'm working overtime, an overtime shift. I think it might have been a Tuesday. Get a phone call from my brother, and my family knows don't call me while I'm at work unless it's something serious. So I answer the phone and he goes, "Hey, have you talked to Dad?" And I'm like, "No." I'm like, "What happened?" He goes, "Well, I've been trying to get a hold of him. He's not answering." And I was like, where is he? He goes, "Well, last I knew he was in the office." So I'm like, okay. I said, "Keep trying. Maybe he fell asleep," right? So he calls me back like 10 minutes later. Now I could hear it in his voice. He's a little more like worried. And he tells me, "Hey, there's cops all around the properties. They're not letting anybody in or out, and no one can get a hold of Dad." So I told him, at that point, my heart, hit the ground. I'm like, oh boy, something bad happened, right? Not letting anybody in and out, tape going up, whatever the case is, it's a crime scene. So I go to my sergeant and my lieutenant, and I tell them, like, "Hey, this is what's going on." And I was like, "I just want to go over there, check, make sure my dad's okay, and I'm going to come right back." They said, "Go." They're like, "Get there now." So, yeah, I head over there. It's a property in Southgate. You know, it's 3 properties. And I pull up, and immediately, as soon as I got there, there's multiple detective cars. And I'm like, all right, what's going on here? Right? So I get
This is
off.
looking rather strange.
Yeah, I was like, okay, this is not your typical crime scene, you know? So I see a bunch of, guys with the externals. I'm like, all right, this is definitely something else. So I get out of my patrol vehicle. I was in the canine unit, so I went in a patrol uniform and everything. So I walk up and I see a detective who I've seen before, and wall stops and all that stuff. And he's like, hey, what's up, bro? Everything's all good. And I was like, hey, I'm just here to check on my dad. He goes, don't worry, you guys are good. We're here for a tenant or a subleaser or something like that. He goes, he's over there if you want to go talk to him. And I'm like, oh, thank God, right? So I walk on over, and I see my dad talking to this federal agent. And they're just, just standing there talking. My dad has his hands folded. And I walk up, and, I have my hands in my vest. I'm like, hey, sir, and he turns around, and he just, like, you get out of here. Like, just get out. And I was a little thrown off by his demeanor.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? This guy's having a bad day, right? So I didn't say anything to him.
Right.
I look at my dad, and my dad looks at me, and I'm like, hey, Dad, you good? And he goes, yeah, I'm good, son. So I said, all right. And then the agent turns around and tells me again, like, you need to go because you're involved in this. It's a conflict of interest. So now, like, I'm like, what? So I walk away. I go back to the detectives over there, who were really cool. They're really transparent with me, and they essentially tell me that they had been watching someone at that property. So it's 3 properties, right?
If I may chime in.
Good, yeah.
Because, I recall, because you did hire me and I read the whole thing. And essentially, it's like it's like a whole bunch of business locations in a business complex, right?
Correct, yes.
And they weren't necessarily focusing on your dad's towing company business. They were focusing on others as well. They were conducting a criminal investigation.
Correct. So, so I go to the detectives. I'm like, hey, like, what's going on? Can I do anything to help you guys? And they're like, no. So they tell me they're watching someone. They observed a vehicle come up. This dude that they were after walks up, grabs 2 duffel bags, puts one in his car, takes the other one into the property. They stop him. They found, I still don't know to this day how much, but apparently it was a lot.
Okay.
Drugs, and they do a rollback. Standard, right? They do the rollback. That's when my dad comes out and he goes, hey, I have, these are my properties. What's going on? And they're like, oh, we're doing a protective sweep. My dad's like, cool. Hey, you have a search warrant? Go for it. This is the address. Cool. I also have these other 2 properties. You can search those. Being completely, cooperative, right? So they do their thing, and again, till this day, I don't know if they found anything or not in there. But that was the gist of it.
Right, and then you end up going back to work, and at some point, this would be HSI getting a hold of you to further their investigation.
Yeah, so I go back to work that same night, and I'm thinking, like, at the time, I'm like, I don't even know this guy that they arrested, right?
Right.
I've never seen him in my life.
Right.
So I go back and I tell my sergeant lieutenant everything. I'm like, hey, and before I left the watch commander's office, I'm like, hey, there's an agent that's probably going to call because he was pissed that I was there. They tell me, don't worry about it. It has nothing to do with you. Is your dad okay? I'm like, he's good.
That's right. Thin blue line.
Yeah.
We're one big happy family.
Yeah.
I got your back, Sergio.
Yeah. So
okay, then what happened?
And I was like, okay, cool. Their lieutenant sergeant were really cool, and went about my shift. The next day, I call my dad, and I'm like, hey, what happened? And he goes, oh, nothing. Doesn't involve us. And I'm like, oh, okay. And he goes, oh, but I did get into a argument with the agent. I'm like, all right, so what happened? And I guess this agent told my dad that there's no way he could be as successful as he is without being involved in criminal activity.
Okay.
So my dad's he has no filter sometimes.
Yeah.
He grew up in Compton. He's about it, right? So he looks at him and he goes, all right. And then the agent tells him, with what we found on your property, you can die in prison. So my dad looks at him and he goes, you know what? You have a higher chance of dying in the line of duty because what you do is inherently dangerous. My business, I don't have to worry about danger. You can imagine how that might set somebody off.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So he
So he wants to flex back.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. So I mean, but it's a respect thing, right?
yeah.
Like
Talk about adversarial.
exactly.
Maybe.
Yeah, but I mean, just because you have a badge doesn't give you the right to start talking. You know,
Of course.
You know what I mean? Like,
Oh, I know what you
there's
mean.
a level of respect, right? So obviously that set him off, and
Yeah.
he ultimately tells my dad, "You know what? Your son's career is gonna suffer because of your decision making." So my dad's like, "You know, my son's clean. You know, like, go for it."
Yeah.
Well, little did I know he went for it. So I remember it's funny because, well, I'm laughing now, but
We can, and before you go any further, it's we can all agree that humor is so needed in this
100%.
profession, right? And we can laugh about it now because the outcome was great. We'll get to that later on, but yeah, it's not a laughing matter what's going down. I can tell you that.
oh no. Yeah.
Right. And at some point, they rang the bell and told your agency.
Right. So I guess they called that Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say it's a Wednesday. And I get a call. I was working Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights.
Okay.
So I would go in at 4 p.m. to 3 a.m.
Right.
That was the K-9 schedule. And I remember I was getting ready for work, and the assistant chief calls me, and he goes, "Hey, do you mind coming in a little early? We have to talk." You know, and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm on my way," which reminds me I should probably put in overtime for that, huh?
Yeah.
You remind me about that.
Yes.
I'm gonna go, hey, you know, I did come in
Yes.
an hour early.
There you go.
So anyway, so
You
I
just
go.
violated policy by showing up.
No,
Let's
so,
get that on the record.
Yeah, so I ultimately, you know, I'm driving, and mind you, you know, I love my agency, right?
Yes.
I'm like, they have my back. I know I did nothing wrong. So I'm going to work. I have my pup in the back. You know, we're ready to go 10-8. And I get to the back lot. We have a big old gate. It opens up. Mm-hmm. And I see my lieutenant, my K-9 lieutenant, and he's in plain clothes on his day off. And I'm like, okay, this is not good.
Okay.
Right? I drive in, and I see the internal affairs sergeant. I'm like, all right, this is going south pretty quick. So I park my unit. They basically tell me, hey, we got to go upstairs, you know, to the conference room. You know, the two assistant chiefs are there, lieutenant. We got to discuss what happened. So I'm like, well, this is a lot of people for something I didn't do, right? So I get up there, and they essentially tell me, like, hey, we try to convince the city otherwise, right? But you're going to get placed on administrative leave. And I'm like, what? Like, at the moment, I was like, I felt pretty betrayed because all I knew was that whatever they're watching somebody else, and I have nothing to do with that. My tow trucks are parked at a different address, right? This agent got upset. You know, he did what he said he was going to do, you know, and now I'm being placed on administrative leave for potential misconduct.
If I may interject, did you know that they were talking about the agent or this situation that happened at the tow yard?
At the time, I was under the impression that it's because I showed up.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you knew there was some connection or involvement with.
Right. Yeah. With
Okay,
something like
got
that.
it.
Just that at that time.
Right.
So it was, I mean, again, it's funny now, but I remember I told, as I'm signing the paperwork, I was like, man, this is because someone got butthurt. I was like, I'll be back in 3 days. Right. But because, again, at my agency, I was like, I've never been in trouble.
Right.
Right. You know, I was like, they have my back.
This is your first IA.
It's my first IA. So I signed the paperwork, and then I turned in my badge. I think the hardest part was seeing my dog, or you know, the city's dog, getting taken out of the car, and he's just looking at me, and he just calls, you know, like, where are you going? And I was like, whatever, you know. It is what it is. At the time, I was confident that I'm coming back quick. Right? 'Cause I didn't do anything.
Right.
So, yeah, that happens, and then, 3 days turned into 3 weeks, 3 months. And I'm like, all right, this is getting frustrating. There's where I really started to lose sleep, you know. And it wasn't because I felt I did something wrong. It was because I felt like I was betrayed. You know, I was like, man, like, how can an agency that I've devoted, or a city, right, that I've devoted so much of my time, you know, I have a passion for this profession, just snap of a finger, right? Like, hey, potential misconduct.
Did anybody get a hold of you when this 3 weeks turned into 3 months? 3 months turned into 6?
No, initially, like, people were just like, hey, it's an admin leave, you know, it's potential misconduct. Like, nobody knew the turn of events that were about to occur.
Right.
You know, everybody's like, oh, he'll be
Right.
fine, you know, and you know, the rumors start spreading. Oh, they raided
course.
his house, you know.
Yeah, of course there's rumors. And you were ordered, of course you got the gag order, right?
If I recall, yeah.
Normally, well, I've seen it both ways, right? I've seen, which is something probably we can discuss, is what I've discovered lately is a lot of small to medium-sized agents, you know, because I come from LAPD. It's a big agency, right? So that's where all my experience comes from, where gag orders are issued up until the actual compelled interview. In other words, you're in a compelled interview with internal affairs, and they order you, you're not allowed to speak to anyone besides your attorney, your rep, and your commanding officer or myself. Do you understand that order, right?
I did get that paper.
Right.
Yeah.
So what I have learned is a lot of these agencies, when they call you in to send you on an admin leave, they actually give you that gag order right there and then. I have my opinions about that, but that's besides the point. So you were probably told, the point I'm trying to drive home is that you were not allowed to talk to anybody about this.
Yes.
Or at least you felt that way.
Yeah, I do remember the order now. In the bottom, it said you're not
Yeah.
supposed to, you know, I could only talk to the attorney.
So you can't even go home and tell your dad or if you know your loved ones what's going on.
Everybody was lost. I mean, there's not much to talk about when you don't know what's going on, right?
Right.
Like, hey, your potential misconduct.
Right.
And I'm here thinking it's because I showed up,
Yeah.
right?
I take it at some point you said, you know what, there's this law firm by the name of Kasey Castillo. There's an attorney that's Paul Raquel DF. Oh my God, I got to give her a call. I don't know who she is. And at some point you had to call Kasey, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I called Kasey.
Well, initially he was assigned to a different attorney in my firm.
Okay.
And she handled his voluntary statement with HSI
Okay.
because, again, Sergio was totally cooperative. No reason not to give a statement to them.
Right. Which, if I may interject, it's a little bit unusual, right? I mean, here we have a voluntary statement with an outside entity. It's probably.
I mean, I don't love it.
Well,
I don't love it. However,
Right.
That's just because I'm paid to be paranoid, right?
Yes.
But you know, you also have to listen to your client. And I
Right.
recall Sergio being very adamant with the attorney that he originally was assigned to that there's no reason for me not to go and give an interview. In fact, maybe this will speed this process up.
Right. The point I was trying to make also, Kasey, is that in my experience, I haven't had many cases where there's this voluntary statement or another law enforcement agency involved before we have the compelled.
Yeah.
You see, something always starts like, you know, there's either you get drunk at a bar and get arrested, you get a DUI, you get a domestic violence, all this off-duty stuff, you get arrested, and then you're like, okay, well, that's an automatic aye, for sure, 100%, we can all agree to that, but this was a little unique in a sense, different.
It was.
Okay.
No, it definitely was, yeah. And I remember I think 8 months had gone by before I got contacted by HSI. And I remember this day as clear as, like it happened yesterday.
Okay.
I get a phone call from this crazy area code, and they're like, hey, you know, is this, you know, so-and-so? I'm like, yeah. He's like, yeah, this is, you know, agent from whatever, HSI. And I'm like, okay. You know, he goes, hey, what's your schedule like? And I'm like, what? Like, I'm on admin leave, you know, I'm Monday through Friday, I'm free. So then I'm like, yeah, I'm free whenever. And he goes, okay, yeah, we just got to ask you some quick questions. He's like, let me call you back. So I was like, this sounds a little suspicious, right? Mm-hmm. So I call my, no, I'm sorry, let me backtrack. He tells me, hey, can you meet us at a location? Bring your passport.
Okay.
Right? So then I'm like, all right, either this is going to be a takedown or,
Dude,
you know, something's going on. Yeah.
Bro, they're going to put you in a van, put a black mask over you, jump you in a van and tie you up in a warehouse in the middle, in the middle of Riverside somewhere, San Bernardino or whatever.
But, you know, I was ready for it because I'm like, you know, I'm innocent. I don't know this guy. You could search my phone, laptop, whatever you need to search. Right? Yeah. I don't know the guy who gets arrested.
Do whatever.
Right. So I remember I called the attorney at the time, and I'm like, hey, I'm ready to do it. They send me a Starbucks down the street from my house, right? Literally down the street from my house. And she's like, what? And I'm like, yeah. She goes, no. She goes, we're going to do this right. You know, we're going to sit down and talk to him. It needs to be recorded. So the agent calls me back and goes, "Oh man, like, I'm sorry. We literally just had to check a few boxes, but now we're gonna reschedule it." So ultimately, I go to the federal building in Long Beach, and I remember walking in. Those agents were really cool. They're like, "Hey man, like, we're sorry, we didn't know you were on administrative leave. We just want to know what's currently going on. What are your current duties within the business?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't do anything. I just sign paperwork. I'm a silent owner, right?"
Right.
And they go, "Okay, how long you been involved?" And I was like, "Well, since I was like 12, 13. And they're like, "Okay, never mind. We want to know what's going on now." And I'm like, "Why am I here?" And they're all like, "Oh, well, I forgot what they told me." And I'm like, I told them, I was like, "I'm not a drug lord,"
Right.
And they're like, "Oh no, we're from the financial branch of this federal agency." And I'm like, I look at the attorney, I'm like, "What?" So we go into the interview, and again, they're really cool. They're nonchalant, they're just like, "Hey, unfortunately, we have to do this." It's their procedure, right? And at that point, I was like, okay, was this done kind of in a vindictive way by this lead agent, calling my department? Yeah, probably. But at the end of the day, I had to check myself and be like, you know what? They're crossing their T's and dotting their I's.
Right.
So, okay, I could respect that.
Right.
Right. So ultimately, I do the interview, and they kind of look at me. They're like, "Hey, dude, we're really sorry. Like, whatever's going on, whatever your agency, your city's doing to you, that's them. We didn't want this for you." So they're like, "We're going to submit our report to the Attorney General's office.
Okay.
Let them know you were completely, cooperative.
Right.
You gave us all the information." Yeah, they made copies of my passport, took all that stuff, and I was like, "All right, well, it is what it is, right?" I think it was Baker Vegas weekend. So I'm like, heck yeah, I'm coming back to work. This guy basically just told me,
You're cleared.
You're clear. And, I'm going to go represent my agency at B2V, even though I'm on admin leave. Like, let's do this, right? Because it's the people that I work with, right?
Yeah.
The go-getters.
That's right.
So I'm like, all right, we're good, right? So then, yeah, I call the attorney at the time the next day, and she goes, "Hey, they cleared you." And I'm like, all right, when do I start?
Right.
It didn't happen.
Okay, let me pick it up from there, because another important factor of this story of yours is that didn't you apply to for the advertisement of a corporal spot?
I did.
Okay.
Yes, simultaneously.
Right. Now, didn't you apply like on your phone, right?
I did, yes.
Right.
Yes.
Because you kind of saw that there was an open advertisement you want to promote.
Yeah, well, I didn't see it, so I didn't have access to my email.
Right.
Yeah, but my partner called me and he told me, "Hey, are you putting in?"
There you go.
Yeah.
So my point is that you apply for this
Yes, I applied
Right.
for it.
While he's on admin leave.
While I was on
while
admin
you're on
leave.
admin leave,
Yeah.
which, by the way, correct me if I'm wrong, but you did apply a year before that, the same application. Would
Yeah,
that be?
same exact.
Okay,
application.
cool. And in that application, there's like some job description about this towing business.
Correct.
Okay, cool. We can go from there.
So yeah, so I applied for the corporal, right?
Because he's going back to work.
Because I'm going. Yeah, again.
So you're going back to work.
I'm going back to work.
B2B, baby.
Yeah. Well, I'm like,
Here
you know
I
what?
come.
I'm going back to work. We're gonna win first place.
Yes.
I'm coming back with stripes.
We're
God
gonna
willing.
get a mug.
Yeah,
We're mugging.
We're mugging.
We're mugging.
So I'm with my friends out there. We're having a good time, and well, yeah, that didn't turn out too good. I get hit up
Okay.
like 3 months later.
The 3 months turns into what? A couple more months?
Yeah.
When you say it didn't turn out too good, what actually happened?
So the department starts doing their own internal one,
Okay.
right? And I'm like, okay, that's like standard, right? I think.
Okay.
I didn't know at the time.
That was my next question, is if I may interject. You're telling me that as we're having this conversation, reflecting on what happened. But at the time, did you know that the department was actually conducting an administrative investigation?
I didn't know till after my interview with HSI. I thought HSI cleared me, and I'm done. I'm back to work.
Okay. But at some point, the department kind of notified you maybe, or told you that you
Yes.
were looking at an administrative investigation?
Yes, I got a letter that stated, we're going to look into you for violation of having no work permit.
Okay,
Right.
okay, cool.
So-
Have you met Kasey yet?
Yes, at this time, yeah, I already
Okay.
knew Kasey.
Okay, so you get a call and you
we
get
get
this
a
letter
call,
saying
and we have
work
a-
permit. You're like, this is just a policy violation. Why are we in at home?
Right.
Thoughts?
And why is this a policy violation when Sergio got hired with this tow company in his background, right?
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, yeah, work permits are important, but it wasn't like an unknown business. So we have an IA, which is fine and normal, and Sergio's articulate. We're going to kill it.
Yeah.
And we get assigned an attorney investigator.
Right. But, I mean, I'm learning something here, too, even though I know this case with a fine-tooth comb. But I can tell you from experience that a work permit is not really someone being sent home. That's just me. I don't know about you, but I've never had someone go on admin leave pending a policy violation for a work permit. That doesn't seem, I'm just telling you as we're reflecting and having this conversation, just from experience. Like when you get sent home, it's pretty serious, right? Kind of trying to figure it out, but it's pretty serious. So to me, that's kind of like, I wouldn't say a red flag, but it just kind of makes me feel like it's kind of a little strange.
It was almost like the HSI investigation was the reason he was on annual
Right.
leave, and then that went nowhere.
Right.
So now we have to do
gotta
some
do
other investigation.
Right, and
somewhere.
we're going to go into this compelled interview, get the work permit, and we're good to go.
Yeah.
Well, it started off with a work permit. That was the initial letter that I got.
Correct.
A few weeks later, I get hit with the dishonesty and trying to influence a federal investigation by the use of my title as a police officer.
Okay, so let me back up because your first letter was because of a violation of not having a work permit, correct?
Right.
So at some point you went to your internal affairs interview.
We didn't do an interview at that time because they sent the dishonesty and the influence like a week later after that.
Okay.
So we didn't even get to schedule the interview for the work permit.
Okay, got it. So they said, oh, well, hold on, time out. It's not just a work permit.
Right.
A week later, it's serious.
Yes. And what's interesting is that I had the application that they reviewed. I tested for corporal. I scored top 3. I had my chief's interview, and my assistant chief's like, "Dude, you did great." So now I'm like, "Oh yes, I'm coming. I'm getting my dog back. I'm getting stripes." Little did I know, behind all that, they're looking at dishonesty on my corporal application. You get what I'm saying?
I totally get what you're saying. I'm just thinking of Kasey here, where she can agree with me that timelines are so important. God, they're so important. So let me get this straight. You get a letter pretty much saying that, hey, we're looking at violations of this work permit policy. Then a week later, you get a letter saying that, hey, it's more serious. We're looking at dishonesty and you being involved with this HSI voluntary statement.
Correct.
And while was it after you got the letter that you went to your corporal interview and you showed up and they scored you and they said, hey man, you're top 3, you're going to make corporal, or you did real good in your interview? Is that how it went down?
No, I interviewed first.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I got the letter.
Then you got the letter.
But I'm like,
Well, now that as I'm reflecting and having this conversation, I don't think either way it looks good, right? In other words, if I got the letter saying, oh my God, dishonesty, involvement with HSI or whatever, then I go through the interview process for corporal,
right?
And then, bam, I get slammed saying, I'm looking at termination here, or the other way, which is probably the best way to describe it, meaning you did all this and then you got the letter saying, hey, we're looking at...
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Talk to me. What happened after that?
So after that, I remember I called Kasey, and I was like, what? The dishonesty? And I think, I had been... Kasey Law Firm, they were probably so fed up with me because I'd call them and go on rants. And then
We're
I'm
not
like,
fed up
okay.
with him. We love
You
him.
get that a lot?
What we did with Sergio, because he did have a lot of questions, and I don't like to have him wait, right? Because I'm I'm running around doing other IAs and whatever, is I have some law clerks that work for me that are also law enforcement, and they just don't work on their own department stuff. And we assigned him a buddy.
Oh, the
And
buddy
they
system.
They
I like
became really good friends.
The buddy system.
And he was able to answer questions. But it was great because he helped me with all my hearing prep. He helped me write the closing brief. And I mean, better than just Kasey and Sergio. We had a team.
Yeah, it was a big team.
Big team.
Let's get to the compelled interview. This is what I like to ask you. Just give me a short answer when I ask you this question. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best in this compelled interview, what would you rate that interview? On
Like
the performance?
Sergio's performance?
Yeah,
or?
no, on the performance of the internal affairs investigator.
Oh, well,
Be nice now.
I don't love attorney investigators.
Okay. And we're going to get into that, right? So this was outsourced to an attorney. Well, it was outsourced to a firm, and he happens to be an attorney. And I was reminded.
But he's a good person. He, I think, has former law enforcement experience. And I wasn't speaking about him specifically when I say I don't love attorney investigators, but I have had attorneys who are the investigator without law enforcement experience.
Okay.
And it's just not good,
Okay.
in my opinion.
No, I that's fair enough. I know you don't want to give it a scale. I read it. In my experience, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest or the best, right? This, for me, and having read hundreds and hundreds of these, I think I'm being nice and saying 5. But I'm saying 5 because of the Q&A volley as to how the questions, when you open up the door to ask questions about a certain facts that you want that happen here, you have to structure an interview. And again, this goes to what we were talking about earlier about having if I'm in a room full of sergeants and I had, what's the one thing you want to know? You need to have investigated. You need to be a really good investigator. So whatever, I don't know, go take that SBI, go take that science-based interrogation class, right?
Batty or whatever.
Yeah, the new, that's old, batty, the batty where they touch you, like, are you okay? And they touch you. You sure that's what you felt? No, the SBI is spot on. I don't know, work robbery, work some really complex, assignments, because this sounds complex. It seems kind of funny and we're joking around, but in the end of the day, you got, the way I see it, okay, we have HSI, right? And then we have an internal administrative, which, by the way, it started as a work permit, but now it turned into a dishonesty. So now we just kind of cranked it all the way up. And now what we're doing is we're essentially saying that you're a liar. So somewhere in this incident, if you will, right? Right. Where you showed up to HSI, someone made the decision that, you know what, you're a liar. Correct. And so for me, you kind of get, the stakes are pretty high. So here you are in your interview, and we've talked about this before. Sergio, kind of describe to us when you started this compelled interview, did you feel like it was structured or compartmentalized? Or did you feel like the investigator was asking you about this particular time and place that happened at HSI, and then we jump over to the application for the corporal? Talk to me. If you can kind of describe that to us for a little bit.
Yeah, I felt like it was definitely, like, the questions were already lined up, and, I'm a pretty respectful guy, right? I was respecting his duties and what his role, and I'm pretty transparent. So every time he'd ask me a question, I would try to elaborate, and we'd jump to another one, and we'd jump to another one. And I was like, okay, well, hopefully he's writing down what I'm saying, right? Again, I've never done this, right? So I'm like,
right.
He's hearing me.
Yeah. You're leaving it up to him.
Right, yeah. Like, you could go ahead and
to guide the investigation.
Guide it, yeah, exactly, right?
Okay, that's fair.
And Yeah, well, that didn't happen. You know, it completely spun on me.
Okay. Kasey, let me ask you this. When you walked into this interview, did you know you were going to talk about both topics? Meaning, I knew you were going to talk about HSI. We can agree to that, right?
Yeah.
Did you know we were going to talk about your corporal application?
No. Oh, what? You know what?
No, I think we did.
We did, yeah.
Because of the information related to how long he'd worked for towing and transport. So it was, based on the work permit that you should have had for towing and transport. Here's the information that you put on your corporal exam or application that
Right.
says exactly when you should have had a work permit when you started working there.
So you had an idea that they were doing this comparison.
I think we had an idea, but I don't think we realized what the crux of the investigation was going to
Okay.
become.
Yeah.
The scope wasn't, did you lie on your corporal application?
Well, we're going to get into that because
Yeah, that's
that's
not what
God.
Yeah.
I call it nails on a chalkboard. Kids call it cringe nowadays.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that, but what I'm interested in know, not just so much me, obviously the audience as well, is when you are being questioned about your corporal exam, did you get a sense that are you comparing this with what I said with HSI, or is there any connection, or how did you feel that this investigation was being guided?
I did feel at one point, I was like, okay, you're drawing comparisons, like
Okay.
what I said at HSI, what I said here. And that's why I corrected it. I was like, hey, you know what? If you're looking at it from your perspective, yes, this could be inaccurate.
Okay.
However, it's the truth. Could I have wrote it a little bit better? Maybe. But that's why I'm telling you that my intent is not to lie here.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like a mystery, or
No,
you
no,
kind of
no.
had
I
a
started
sense
getting-
that
yeah.
they were doing this comparison. like,
Right.
Maybe there is some inaccuracies.
Probably about like 45 minutes into the interview, I was like, okay.
Okay, all right. Then what happened?
Well, he asked me a couple more questions, and I think I started to get lost because the questions went from one extreme to the next. And I think in one of them, he asked me, did you call, the local agency that was involved in this and try to get information? I was like, no, I didn't. And he goes, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure. Why would I call them? That's their investigation. I don't want to get involved. And he plays a recording, and my dad and I share the same name.
Okay.
So then he goes, that's not you. And I'm like, is the number, this, and that? And he goes, yeah. I'm like, that's my dad. We have the same name. And he goes, okay, next question. That's when I knew. I'm like, well, how deep did you really look into this? And are you even paying attention to what I'm telling you and trying to make this clear as far as dates and duties? So at that point, I was like, you know what? This is, I could kind of see the end game here. There's where I was really like, you know what? I'm probably going to get fired, because they're trying really hard here.
When you left that interview, at some point you ended up getting, what is it called? A notice of proposed discipline or something like
Yes,
that?
proposed discipline.
And there was an allegation of dishonesty.
Dishonesty and attempting to use my title as a police officer to influence a federal investigation.
Unbecoming conduct, is what it was. And then, of course, the good old, hey, we didn't have a work permit for using your towing services, or something along those lines, right?
No.
It's easier to answer this question now because, again, we're reflecting on it, we're having this conversation. But I want to know, at that time, when you saw in that notice of intent for disciplinary action the allegation of dishonesty, did you know that during your compelled interview with the investigator, the IA investigator?
No. Yeah, I didn't. Like, did I see it coming? Is that what? Or?
Well, you saw it coming.
Right.
You felt something was wrong.
I felt something was wrong.
You did
definitely.
say, you just got done
Yeah.
saying that, hey, you know what, I think they're after me.
Yeah.
Or they're coming after me.
Yeah.
Okay. But I want to know, right? I mean, I know the answer now, right? But we would like to know, did you know that at the time that you were in your compelled interview, that you were being accused of being a liar.
Yes.
Yeah, because it was in the scope of the notice. I think if we recall
That's the notice.
the notice.
Okay, when did the notice come out?
The notice came before we went into the interview, but it didn't say what he was dishonest about.
Correct.
And it was very interesting in the interview because, I mean, we're talking about having worked at this family business for your whole life.
Yeah.
You know, it was minutia details that they wanted to know.
Right.
And he honestly did his best in that interview. And as the attorney sitting there, you know, I'm listening to Sergio and I'm thinking, okay, I think that makes sense how you explained it. That makes sense how you explained it. But man, I don't know that the answers were what they wanted.
Okay, you know, we're throwing softballs. You know, I get that part. Here's what I'm trying to drive home, and you're going to appreciate this. And I think you know where I'm going with this. Okay. And I'm coming to you, Kasey. You've been doing this for 15 years. My question to you is, would you prefer? Okay, it's a good way to start a question. Would you prefer that if your client was aware of such career ender, right? Quote unquote, you lie, you die, right? Of a dishonesty allegation so that you can prepare with your client before that compelled interview?
Yeah, because I think that, you know, dishonesty to me, based on all the cases that I've seen, is so subjective. Mm-hmm. I have a case right now where it's been described as we feel you were dishonest. Not we can prove, not there's objective information. We feel it, right? Mm-hmm. So in Sergio's case, it was hard because the way the questions were, it was bouncing all around. So he was doing his best to essentially answer about 20 years of work experience.
Right.
For his dad and what he did this year and what he did when he turned, 15 and when he was 16 and then, and all that. Mm-hmm. And then remember, you're answering on an application. So the boxes are small.
Yeah.
It's not, write extra information, although I guess we could have done that. We learned later. Yeah. Lessons learned. But it was one of those things where I personally was shocked at the findings because of how he answered. I thought Sergio did his best, and I think that it was a total memory test.
Have you had clients, again, you've been doing this for quite some time, where you've had a subsequent interview to clear up any misunderstandings or any misrepresentations? Has that been a practice? I'm so curious to know.
You know what? I would encourage that, but I don't ever feel like we get that opportunity. And in fact, I recently went to a hearing where my client is accused of dishonesty, and it's almost like, had I known that that's what you were concerned about or what you were looking for, it would have been great to go have that conversation. What ends up happening is those conversations now just happen at Skelly.
Of course. Yeah, and that's...
But findings have been made.
Somewhere, somehow, some way, we turn in this completed internal affairs investigation, and it's at the adjudication level. I don't know who... You're roundtabling it, hopefully with, your colleagues here, commander, deputy chief, whoever, and someone just arbitrarily decides that, you know what, we're just going to go ahead and add on dishonesty, and we're going to get and fire them. It's 2026. And this has been happening even when I started this back in 2008. It's just mind-boggling because let me ask you this. Would you have preferred a subsequent interview? Hey, Sergio, you know what? Look, we jumped all around with with your application here for the corporal where you describe your job description and what you say to HSI. So I want to get some clarity here because it seems to me like I'm having a hard time trying to understand what the roles were, the duties, responsibilities, et cetera, I almost feel like I'm being misled. I think that's fair to say. I just feel like a lot of these investigators don't want to ask the hard questions, and they don't want that adversarial. Look, we're already calling it. We've agreed, right, in the beginning of our conversation, yeah, it can be adversarial. Well, you know what? This is a time where it's going to be adversarial, and we're going to be confrontational. Hey, Sergio, I think that you're lying to me, and I don't want to charge you with an allegation of dishonesty. So I'm going to give you a second bite of the apple, and I want to have some clarity here. What do you think?
I actually expected that. After the interview, after we were done, I was like, you know what? I sat down and I thought, yeah, that was kind of all over the place. I felt that my agency would probably schedule a second one and been like, hey, you know what? Let's clear this up a little bit, because it's just kind of all over the place.
Right. There's some misrepresentations.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So, and that's what I expected. And then, when I got the call from Kasey saying, hey, they want you to resign in lieu of, I was like, whoa, well, that's not going to happen.
Right. Yeah. What's it all about? Talk to me. What happened then?
Kasey tells me in lieu of, and
is that like an option? Is that part of the culture?
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't know, because with this particular agency, we really haven't had investigations go to that level. So
right, but would it be fair to say in your practice, right, you've been doing this for quite some time, where it's an option?
It used to be more of an option.
Okay.
Now it's just really not, because what is it? What is resign in lieu?
Yeah. No, I get it. Me personally, I don't like the option.
It's rare that my clients take that option,
right,
unless they have decided they're not going to fight and law enforcement is not for them.
Correct.
I'm going to go be a realtor, resign in lieu.
Got it.
Right? Because then my application's not going to say I was terminated. Cool. And that's personal preference, for sure. Mm-hmm. But not for Sergio, because...
No, I think the driving force behind... Because I remember you asked me, you're like, you want to be a cop again? And I'm like, yeah. Mainly I want to clear my name and my business name. Yeah. I'm not some drug lord, money laundering kingpin, right? Like,
yeah. El Chapo.
Yeah. Like, I've worked hard to get where I was at. Like I said, I dedicated a lot of time, to that agency. And I was like, there's no way. I'm not going to let myself down, let everybody who's vouching for me down, right? So
yeah.
And truly it was a misunderstanding versus a mischaracterization, which was particularly sad when you think of someone who's never had their integrity called into question.
Right. Would you please, give me some flowers, bro? So talk to me. How do we meet, Sergio?
So
give the IAGA a little flowers, please, while I'm looking up something.
So at the beginning of all this, I get a call from a former FTO. He lateraled out, good dude, and he was checking on me, right? And he goes, hey, I really think you should contact this Marlon guy. And I'm like, what? Like, what are you talking about? And he sends me your Instagram and everything, right? And I'm like, and I see some of the interviews you had done, and I'm like, oh, I wonder. And I remember clear as day, you were driving back from Fresno, and I'm venting to you, and you're like, well, this sounds a little interesting to say the least, right? Because at the time, I was probably all over the place, right?
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I get those calls all the time. I'm like, I'm just driving, I'm checking, social media, and I'm like, okay, this guy's just venting.
I mean, until this day, I think that former FTO, it's like, had it not been for him, we would have never been in contact. And that was a blessing,
And thank you very much. I always say this in every show, and I'm not going to forget that God does his best work through people. He uses us as instruments for good or bad. And in this case, it was real good.
Yeah.
Because when you gave me that call, in the beginning, I was like, I'm hearing the story. And then I remember you sent me your IA. You told me, you said, hey, thank you for doing what you're doing. I feel like I'm not alone.
Yeah.
Which is the purpose of all this.
Right.
And God, I probably have never felt more purposeful than this. So I'm blessed to do this. With that being said, I believe you gave me your internal affairs investigation, and I'm like, I took a quick look at it, right?
Yeah.
Because all I ever ask is for a summary investigation. People say, well, let me send you you have a Dropbox or a Google Drive? They want to send you everything, dude. Everything. And I don't want to read everything. Let me just read what the investigator wrote. That's what I'm more interested in anything. And I did, and I was like, this doesn't look that good. And then you said, hey, I want you on my team. I want you to get a hold of Kasey, right?
Right.
So Casey's probably thinking to herself, who the hell is this IA guy? Like, who's this guy? And for the record, and maybe you can chime in on this, but would it be fair to say that there isn't much expertise to talk about investigations as it relates to internal affairs?
No, and man, in this particular case, it literally made the entire difference, because this case was not in front of a hearing officer or an arbitrator. It was in front of a commission, civil service commission. So it was lay people. There was an attorney on the board, but predominantly community members, right? Mm-hmm. So they don't see this all the time. They don't understand what goes into this. So to have someone come in with police practice expertise, and then I think what was really important was your take on, the threshold for dishonesty. And it shouldn't just be a feeling or a speculation.
Yes.
There has to be an intent to be deceptive as opposed to being mistaken or inaccurate, because people will make mistakes all the time. But it's how you are intending to get that message across. And I think when Sergio called me, he's like, there's this Marlon guy. And I'm like, well, send me the Instagram so I could look him up. And I was like, hey, man, if Porex didn't pay for it.
That's right.
I mean, okay.
That's right. You
it.
did send me. You said, hey, what do you think? I'm like, I can do some professional damage with this thing. And again, so just to kind of highlight what you went through, both of you, right? I believe the first thing that stood out for me more than anything, because I'm looking at dishonesty. Dude, dishonesty is like my bread and butter, because I've dealt with a lot of false statements, And I say this, and I'll keep saying it over and over and over again. Yes, I understand it's LAPD. People have their own opinions about LAPD. People can get biased. Civil service commissions, arbitrators, who the hell is LAPD? They're the big bad wolf. They think they're all that. However, what I will say about my beloved LAPD, they got this right. Why? Because we're the only agency that actually has a definition of a false statement and a definition of a misleading statement. And I've been doing this for 2.5 years, right? I've been teaching up and down the state of California for 3 years. At the time, it was like 2 years. And I haven't gotten a phone call. I haven't gotten an email, or anyone has gotten a hold of me across the nation to say, hey, you know what? We actually have a definition. So to your point, we start talking about emotions. You know what? I kind of think they're lying. Okay, well, that's not good enough. Time out. Think about what you're actually doing, Chief, right? And this is where it's self-serving. This is why I always say every internal affairs investigation, at some point during the levels of review, it gets personal. It gets personal. Someone doesn't like Sergio, which is hard to believe, because, I got to give you some flowers here. Let's see. Highest arresting officer, right? In 2018 for proactive arrest. Let's see. 2 life-saving awards. SWAT team canine officer. You were awarded and recognized by the city for a large narcotics arrest. Active shooter instructor, right? Yeah. You had 8 years on. And
he was their runner.
And you were their main runner. You actually contributed into the station for a mural.
Correct. Yeah, I donated canine plaques for all the former canine handlers.
There you go.
Did that for them.
Right.
And that was on behalf of my business.
But overnight, you are the worst thing ever in this department, and you're a liar.
Yeah, the liar is what really got me.
Of course.
Yeah, I was like,
hey, we'll take some accountability for the work permit.
Yeah, what's interesting is Kasey and I were talking about it. At the Skelly hearing, we made a good offer before you terminated me.
We made that we should have never made that up.
Right.
I mean, it was a sweet
that
deal.
was-
Like,
Yeah.
I would have I would have
was
taken it.
Right.
You know,
excessively good.
but you know,
I get it, but
yeah.
listen, policy violation is a policy violation.
Right? Yeah, 100%.
Happens all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, I can tell you right now, it's not a fireable offense. I've never seen a policy violation where it's a fireable offense. It's rare. And if you have one and you're facing termination,
Call
definitely,
Marlon.
yeah, call me because I haven't seen one.
Yeah.
With that being said, a couple of highlights, right? So I get this case, I'm talking to Kasey, and I'm like, okay, first and foremost, the one thing that you don't want to say, which was very surprising to me, was, hi, my name is, I'm this investigator, and I'm an attorney, and I've been hired by the city to be, I love this part right here, quote unquote, a third neutral party. I'm thinking, that's great. It's a great way to introduce yourself. Okay. I'm a civilian now, and I'm doing that. I think I would say something like that too. Hey, I'm just here to remain neutral. I want to just gather as many facts as I can. I'm going to be an evidence gatherer. I'm going to seek the truth. I'm going to turn every single stone. No stone goes unturned. Got it. Great. But hold on a second. I look at this investigation. It's got a heading of findings. I'm thinking that's kind of interesting. Well, findings to me, what that means is it's kind of like determining an outcome. At least what we can call it is like a predetermined outcome. In other words, okay, I'm now, you got my attention. What are you saying under this heading? Words have meanings, right? Frames the allegations, which, by the way, I didn't understand when he said that you were inaccurate and dishonest. Okay, got it. Yeah, I can see the inaccuracy. Okay, cool. Dishonesty, where is that coming from? So the way I would have framed it, and I think I explained it pretty well, was, look, if you're going to allege, listen, you can frame as many allegations as you want. Have at it. We're good. Make one that he was inaccurate, but make the other one dishonest. Words have meanings. Separate the book. If that's what you want to do, that's fine. But then what I found interesting is that he made him sustain. He actually sustained him. Yeah. And what I've been learning for the last 2 to 3 years is the practice amongst, I'm going to go out and say probably all, I shouldn't say all, majority of agencies in the state of California practice the way they did with you, which means that the investigator gets to make a predetermined outcome on behalf of the chief of police. Guess what? Time out. You can't do that. You know why? Because that's not your job. Your job is to investigate. Your job is to gather evidence. Your job is to turn every single stone. Whatever lead you get, go ahead and follow it. When you open up a door to answer certain questions, you have that Q&A volley, have at it. As a matter of fact, you might want to have a partner with you and say, hey, did I miss anything, before we move on and talk about your corporal application? Because we're still here talking about HSI, right? Have some formality, structure, and a flow in your investigation. But when I saw that he made them sustain means that you adjudicated, means that you had made an outcome. Like it occurred, it actually happened. Well, I'm still puzzled. You say you were gonna be a third neutral party. Well, my question was, well, how neutral can you be when you're making a predetermined outcome on behalf of the chief of police? And I don't think they appreciated that. I think that didn't look all that well. Yeah. And it was kind of weird because when I showed up to the hearing, here we are at 6 o'clock. I believe that day I just had a hearing. My mind, yeah, dude, I had a hearing. Christine, we had a long day from 9 to 5 just arguing back and forth. And then I drive to Alhambra. I drive over there and I'm walking and I'm just like, okay, cool. I see us. It's in the chambers and I see Kasey, I see you, and then I look over to my right and I see, and by the way, this is my first time ever testifying as an expert in front of a civil service commission. I didn't know that I was gonna see a city attorney, a city manager with the chief and his class A's having dinner or talking to, wait, who are those 5 people? what do you know? They're the hand-selected civil service commissioners of your hearing. And I'm thinking to myself, what? You know, when they say kangaroo court, it is kangaroo. You know, there's a certain taste to that, right? And it was kind of interesting because from my lens and my experience was the court reporter was like right here. I remember the way I had to sit, like, in other words, I'm sitting like this and I'm facing the city attorney with the chief and then this way, but then you're like behind me, right? So I don't have room. It's not like I'm neutral where I can see both parties. So I remember you asked me questions on direct, and these guys were writing all kinds of stuff down, right? They were like, oh, really? Yeah, you know what? I don't understand. How do we go from an HSI investigation, all of a sudden we're just looking into this application? Which, by the way, that application that he submitted, he submitted on his phone, and he submitted it a year prior with the same information. And in addition to that, what I found kind of interesting, there's nowhere in the investigation saying that, you know, if we're going to audit his job description and everything in this application, well, shouldn't we do that for all the other 11? Because I believe there's other 11 applicants that also apply for this job. And what happened to those, right? And so they start looking like, I remember when the one guy was looking, he was writing, you know, this and that. And it made me realize that how important, more than anything, how important it is to conduct very fair, impartial, equitable, and reasonable investigations. And you know what? They didn't do that in this case, you know. And I think I told them to have some accountability. Look, you know what? You could have done a better job, like reviewing, you know, your application. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I could have done it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could have done a better
And
job.
then, interestingly enough, also in the investigation, which, by the way, I found very interesting, is that he actually gave the opinion that you had a desire
You know,
to promote.
yeah.
You padded. I've never seen that. You padded the information because you had a desire to promote.
You know, till this day, I scratch my head about that. I'm like, how does a towing company, you know, compare to a police department?
Which I think I was surprised. I'm like, well, hold on a second. This is like, this guy's working at it's a towing company.
Yeah.
Look, if you put in your application like you worked at other agencies and, you know, I don't know, I got Officer of the Year and you didn't, okay, that's different. You know, but we are talking about your towing company. What do you think? What's your thoughts? I've talked too much.
As far as like how they compared it, or
Yeah, well, look, let's get to the to your testimony, man. And did you? Here you are. You have your day in court. This is your day.
oh yeah, that okay.
You've been waiting this whole time, and
Right.
kind of describe your emotions. How did it go down for you?
You know, I went up there, sat down in the same chair you sat down in, and and this is for anybody who ever goes through this, right? The board doesn't know who you are. They just know what the city is accusing you or the department's accusing you of, right? So character means everything, right? You got to be genuine. I think when I went up there, I was like, I know I'm telling the truth. I know I didn't lie. So I had no trouble speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt good up there, you know, and I felt that I really drove home like, hey, you know, growing up in a Hispanic family with a dad who's a business owner, you start working the minute you can start walking, right? That's kind of how they raise you. And I'm like, you can't take that from me. You don't know, you know, all the lessons and all the experience that I got working with my dad, right? And I'll tell you this, side story, it kind of helped me later on. I remember I was working with my dad one day, and I don't know, we got into an argument or something, and I was like, you know what, I quit. And he looks at me and he goes, okay, well, I'll drop you off on the way to the yard. You know, I'll drop you off at home. Because whether you quit today or tomorrow, this machine keeps working. You need this, I don't. That's coming from my dad, right? Well, when I went back to work, you know, the chief looks at me and he goes, kind of giving me his perspective on what happened, and he goes, you know, this was just business. That changed my whole perspective on everything. It literally blew my mind, because it went back to when I was 13, 14, when my dad told me that. Here I am, you know, at a department where brotherhood, this and that, and now I'm being told it's just business. Okay, I could operate that way too. So my perspective changed, right? And I'm like, okay, this is how I'm going to operate now, right? If we're saying it's just business.
Yeah.
We could go that route.
Were you able to get a read of the sentiment of the Civil Service Commissioners?
Yeah, I think after probably like 15 minutes of being up there, they were kind of just like, whoa. You know, because I told them my upbringing. I told them everything that I've gone through. I've told them everything that I've done at Alhambra and you know, that, you know, as cheesy or whatever as it sounds, every day that I went to work, I didn't go there to just go check boxes and, oh, look at me. You know, let me go rub elbows with this supervisor because I'm trying to move up. No, I went out there because I'm going to give 110% to that community. I'm going to give 110% to my partners.
Yeah.
Right? So I made sure I let the board know that's who I am. Not some liar, not some drug lord, right? My family isn't shady, you know? So I drove that home, and I think after a while, they were all looking at each other like, oh, like, wow.
Well, and he had the benefit of testifying less. So because we had been going at this, it was evening hearing. And, you know, we go last. And we had witnesses. We called the other detective that, you know, they accused him of trying to
Influence.
That's right.
And
That
we
looks
called
very
you.
unfavorable.
We called you.
Yes.
And we had declarations from character witnesses. We put on a case. But by the time we were able to testify, the commission had heard everything that he was accused of. So we were able to really just kind of dial right down, which would have been great had we been able to do that in the IA interview. And we you know, might not have been here.
I don't think we'd be here.
Right. So we were able to just address those specific topics. I recall the hearing officer or the commissioners having a couple questions for him. And I remember thinking to myself that those were good questions for us.
Right.
Yeah.
Like they were getting it. And then, but Sergio testified, he's a genuine person.
Yes.
You know, sometimes Sergio probably is too forthcoming with his feelings. Like he just, you know, he's been very honest. In this
Yeah,
area.
he let it
I'm
all
like,
out. No,
damn, dude.
Yeah.
We're gonna be in the new IA tomorrow.
Yeah.
But
No.
but you're
Yeah.
this is you, right? This is
Yeah,
your personality.
yeah.
So they were able to actually see how you would answer questions asked by two strangers at this point
Right.
in an HSI interview, and then by the investigator, and then to tell it in your own words is very different.
Yeah.
Right. So he was able to do that, and ultimately they got it. I mean, the majority on every single charge was either 5-0 or 4-1 for Sergio.
I think there was 141.
1-4-1 on one
5-0.
charge, but everything else was
Well, I was going to ask you
Majority.
that saying, read the room.
yeah.
What was that like? Did you get a feeling like, you know what, this is not...
I'll be honest. I thought when I seen everybody having lunch and mingling in the back, I was like, I'm doomed.
Right.
No, I went back there to make sure.
Yeah,
Right.
Kasey went back there. Yeah.
I watched it. You were good.
Well, that's something to be said. I mean, you've been doing this for quite some time. I mean, is that like...
No, I
Look,
mean, I don't experience
I-
that too often. However, I will say that I don't experience it too often because, man, the last time I did a
Yeah.
civil service hearing in Alhambra was a decade ago.
Right.
Honestly.
Well, I meant
So,
to ask you in your civil service hearings in general.
you know, most of the time it is not civil service anymore. It is a hearing officer.
An arbitrator.
And they might be advisory to a civil service commission. And we don't get to know those people so much, and we're just
Right.
trying to convince one person as opposed to 5.
Right. Another highlight I remember was going back to the findings, right? When she did ask me, Mr. Marrache, you seem to have a problem with the word findings. Came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I said, no, ma'am. As a matter of fact, I don't have a problem. I have a problem with the heading of findings. And I have a problem when you frame those allegations, which is part of his job. But what I really do have a problem is when he actually made them sustained. That's not his job. And I think I pointed, I'm like, you know what? We can all in this room agree that the ultimate decision maker on every single internal affairs investigation is the chief of police. That's not his job.
Right.
And I think she proceeded to say something about, you know, the Association Workplace Investigation, AWI. I go, yeah, I think I got an email, some organization. She introduced a brochure saying that they're allowed to do findings. Okay, great. Look, if that's the way you practice, I'm not one to say that it's right or wrong. I'm one to say that, you know what, it's just not fair. It's not your job. It's not a right and wrong. It's just not your job. It's not your job. I get this a lot. I've been hired on other ones where it just so happens. And I've had conversations with chiefs. I got a buddy of mine who's a chief of a small agency, ex-LAPD guy, who challenged me and told me, no, and I'm like, really, dude? You went through an IA with LAPD. You're gonna tell me that that's the way you feel? He goes, oh yeah, we do that all the time. It should be that way. They're just making a recommendation. Okay, even if you have a heading of recommendation, I don't know. I got a problem with that. And here's the way I see it, and maybe you can agree with me or not. If I'm a background investigator, I don't put in my background investigation and turn it in and go to the chief and say, hey, you know what? They're hired. Hire them.
It's agency specific, because I will see agencies where the investigator makes
A recommendation.
some
Findings, conclusions.
And then the next level manager makes the penalty recommendation or makes those findings.
Right.
Right. Predominantly, that's what I see.
Yeah.
Is the captain is making the findings and the recommendation, and then the chief accepts, rejects, or modifies. Right?
Yeah. Well, what I've experienced is that the investigator, like when I lead the summary, they're the ones. It's got your name on it. And there's a table of contents and it says findings.
A lot of outside investigators.
A lot of outsourcing, but there's been some inside. It just seems to me that that's like the practice. And again, if that's the way you practice, that's fine. But if you're going to hire a guy like me, I'm going to argue. Hey, you know what? It might be a weak argument. I'm not saying my argument is be all end all. Like, hey, he's the IA guy. He's right. What I'm saying is that I just feel like that's not your role. You shouldn't be making predetermined outcomes on investigations.
I don't disagree with you, because I'm being delicate again. There are instances where I feel like because someone else is doing that job, there are instances where the chief just goes, okay, someone else made that, I'm just going to agree with them. Come to Scully, change my mind.
Right.
But I don't know all of what is in the investigation.
No, I totally get. Well, let's think of it this way. Let's turn around a little bit where I say, you know what, they're unfounded. I put in your investigation, they're unfounded. But now it's at the Scully level, and you know what? They actually change it, and then now they want to fire you. Who's going to be my first witness?
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, investigator, did you write this? Yes, I did. Is this your findings? Yeah. Did you make a predetermined outcome on this? What was your outcome? I'm interested to know. It was unfounded. It didn't happen. Oh, really? Well, why didn't you? Well, you investigated from the beginning, right? You own this, right? No stone goes unturned. You did a very thorough investigation, but you turned it in, your boss has changed your mind.
And I've seen that happen.
You have?
I've seen it
Yeah.
happen where I say, now I have to subpoena their investigator.
Someone's tap dancing like, well, I changed my mind because of this. And I get that. Here's another example. You had you were a DA.
I was.
Okay, well, let's go down that rabbit hole. Sergio and I are robbery detectives, and we catch this 211. We've been looking for this robbery suspect. Whole bunch of Walmarts for like the last 6 months. We show up to work Monday, and they're in the box. Patrol got them. We're going to go in there in the box, right? There's only 3 things that are going to happen. We're going to get a confession. They're going to lie. They're full of shit. They're going to lie. Or they're going to invoke, right? Their Fifth Amendment, right? Invoke Miranda. Okay, we're good to go. We're asking questions. And let's just say for the purposes of this rabbit hole scenario, they halfway through they tell us, like, yeah, I was at Walmart. We have some evidence.
Right.
We have enough probable cause to prove that yes, they did those robberies, right? Those 211s, right? But then next thing you know, I don't want to talk anymore, you know. And then we kind of find out they're full of shit. So you kind of get a little three. So then we go to Kasey and say, hey, Kasey, you know what? Here's your charge sheet. Here's your charge sheet. You know what? Go ahead and file that 211. Sergio and I, we'll see you at the prelim. What do you think?
Right.
That's not the job of it's no any different than an internal affairs investigator. You just don't do that. It's the same thing. You're investigating. The difference is you're investigating your colleague, and some of these allegations are pretty serious, especially if you're going to call someone a liar. You're going to call someone a liar, you know what? You need to crank that up. You have to be very, very certain that if you're going to be accusing your colleague of lying, you better get it right. Yeah. And it's been my experience, for the most part, lately, right, since I've been teaching and doing this kind of work, that the departments don't get it right. And you know what? And again, we didn't have this conversation to throw shade. That's not what it's about. I think more than anything, it's to just kind of get a little bit of education and a little bit of information about what you went through, because we can sit here and talk about all these little things that happened, but at the end, you waited and waited and waited, and you prevailed, which, by the way, this could have been handled at the department, right? Hey, let's get some clarity here, because we have some misunderstandings. So, anything I missed? Or anything you'd like to say? Well, let me ask you this. You're back at work, right?
Yes, I'm back at work.
Talk to me about the sentiment. Talk to me about how does that feel like going back to work?
I'm not gonna lie. It felt a little weird the first couple days.
Mm-hmm.
When you're so stressed for almost 2 years, your body starts to change, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. I was at my barbershop, and I just started sweating out of left field, and I felt instant fight or flight, right? So feeling all that, going back to work, it's like almost this, you know, you're like, whoa, you're readjusting, right? It's kind of like a shock to the body. After I got over that, I was like, all right, kind of like riding a bike.
You filled out his work permit?
Yeah, I filled out my work permit. Filled that out.
Check that box.
So, I mean, it's been good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think everybody at the department and everybody who was involved in all this, we kind of hashed it out,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm a completely different person now that I've gone through this.
Right.
You know, and like I told my assistant chief when I got back, I was like, you know what? In a weird way, I'm thankful that this happened to me. Mm. And he looked at me like I was crazy, you know, and I was like, no, I really am. Because I went back to school while I was off, got my degree, you know, stayed in shape, right? Met a lot of cool people. A lot of people that are going through the same process, right? That we're really good friends now. You know,
That's
we
right.
met, right?
That's right.
So, yeah, I mean, even though it was a pretty crappy situation, I think it's one of the best things that probably could have happened to me.
What have you learned about yourself since this process?
Oof.
Or about the process?
Yeah. What
do you
have I
think?
learned about myself? I learned how to be me again, you know, because we preach disassociate work, you know, don't, you know, bring your work life with it. You can preach it all day long, but until you have your badge and gun taken from you, you start to realize, like, who am I, right? Who am I without this title? Who am I without this badge? And I think when all this happened to me, I went through that. And I was like, okay, this is who I am. You know, this is me without the badge. And it taught me how our mutual friend, Gonzalez, right? Mm-hmm. He had a long talk with me, and he tells me, it's all about balance, right? Mm-hmm. When you go back, balance everything, Right? Don't go too hard on K9. Don't do this. Right? So that's what I learned about myself. The process, well, I still scratch my head about it, right?
Yeah.
Why didn't we have that conversation? Hey, let's clear this up.
Yeah,
But-
and those should be the lessons learned. I think more than anything, you get a sense of. I almost feel like we're all accountable. It's all of us, right? Meaning that saying we are our worst enemies, like we eat our own. It's due to a sense, but you know what? Let's do something about it. We can just be better. That's all, right? We're not holding any grudges. There is betrayal. It's hard to get over. I mean, it's very emotional, meaning, especially when you go back to work, right? Because you feel as though like, hey man, you know what? We got this one wrong, and I think that's okay to say. And this is just me speaking for probably the majority of agencies, where it's okay to say we got it wrong. It's okay to tell everybody we got it wrong. It's okay to apologize. It's okay to do that. It's kind of like playing sports, right? Hey man, yeah, you were wide open, and I messed up. Yes, that was the play, right? I mean, think about how many coaches tell their quarterbacks, "Tit, you had, and you cost us the Super Bowl." You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like the same analogy where, you know what, we got this wrong. Me personally, I would have gathered everybody up and said, you know what? Hey, for what it's worth, you can think whatever you want to think. If we're going to preach transparency, here you have it. We got this wrong. And so be it. And what I appreciate the most out of this whole conversation is that you actually showed up. I've been waiting for this, which, by the way, that testimony happened a year ago this month.
Yeah,
it's been a year, right? And I don't get many guests who want to be that forthcoming, who want to be forthright and be truthful and honest about what happened. And what is it that we can do to make it better? That's what this is really all about.
Right.
It's not to point fingers and throw shit. We can do that all day. That's not going to get you nowhere. As a matter of fact, I know you're going to echo when I say this, is that your agency, along with my LAPD, has afforded me so much success. A lot of success. And I owe it to the department. But when you get it wrong, it's okay to get it wrong.
Yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, right, you'd have leadership that would come down and say, hey, you know what, we got it wrong. But you know how it goes, right?
Yeah.
It's a pride thing sometimes, whatever the case is.
Mm-hmm.
What changed my perspective was it's just business.
There you go.
I got that. Check, right? So, I mean, it is what it is.
That's right.
You know what? There's not a bone in me that's disgruntled. I am proud of everything that I went through, and I prevailed, right? I love everybody dearly who was there for me, and I'll be there for them. And anybody that's going through this, we all want to, we all became a cop for a reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
We all want to help people and do all that. But unfortunately, when you're proactive, when you have an opinion on something, you might ruffle some feathers.
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely.
But understand that if your heart's in it, God's gonna take care of you, right? If you go through something like this and you're genuine, you're being honest, you go in there day in and day out, give your partners 110%, God's gonna take care of you.
Kasey, of course, I can't leave you out. Any growth? Not out of just Sergio, but just a process. Since you've been doing this for quite some time?
I've been doing this for quite some time. I don't have favorite clients, but I will say that Sergio's case reinvigorated my practice a little bit because...
Give you purpose?
It did, because a lot of times it's just me and the client, but this was very much a team effort. I mean, we have shirts, we wear the Tapatio swag. We're very proud of Sergio, and it's just one of those things where, this is one of the most important things that I do, because families are affected if we get it wrong. And so a a success like Sergio's was, something that we took to heart, and it pushes us forward to the next one, right?
Yep. I've been meaning to ask you too, is that, have we gotten any better? I keep talking about getting better. You tell me. You've been doing this for 15 years. Has it gotten any better? Just from
I'm going to say agency specific. There are agencies that I feel definitely want to get it right.
You got to get it right.
Yeah, and I feel that. There are other agencies that I feel maybe manipulate the process. And that's unfortunate because, if an agency does everything right, the burden is so low, I lose every time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you don't need to make it unfair.
Yeah.
Because if it's fully like a great investigation and
Yeah.
the allegations are upheld and the penalty's not unreasonable, then I lose every time.
Yeah.
So, I don't love the win at all costs from the agency side because, I understand you don't want to employ bad employees. I fully get that as a business owner myself, right? And I'm sure you do too as a business owner.
Yeah.
Right? That's not the goal, is to
Yeah.
keep the bad ones, but it is the goal to be fair.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if you did something wrong, I totally agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree. We were talking before we were recording where I have a guest coming in who he not only got fired, he got booked on a criminal offense. And he's willing and able to come in and tell his story. And of course, he's 100% accountable. But you know what? The process, that's a whole different story. Very unfair treatment. And yes, we could have done better, is my point.
Right, 100%.
We're almost at the end. Let's wrap it up with this. Look, I'm going to leave you the floor, and I'm going to ask you any advice that you have for anyone that wants to come on and become a law enforcement officer. What advice would you have?
Never forget why you got into the job. That's what's going to drive you home. You lose track of that, you start wanting to just check boxes, promote, you know what I mean? No. Don't. There's a LAPD alumni captain, Captain Wemmer, I believe his name was. In the academy, he told us, write down what you want to be remembered as. And I wrote down this paper. At the time, I was like, this is cheesy. Right? So I write it down. I still have that note. And I was like, you know what? Going back to work, right? Like you said, you feel weird.
Yeah.
I got to remember why I started this job.
Yeah.
So don't forget why you started.
I appreciate that. Kasey, I'll ask you the same. Any advice you have for anyone who wants to become a law enforcement officer? What advice do you have for them?
My advice is more once you become a law enforcement officer and you have to go through an IA, tell your attorney the truth, because I can't help you if I don't know the entire story. What was great about Sergio was he was very upfront about, man, I don't remember that. That was forever ago, but I could look into it. I can go see if my dad has paperwork, that kind of thing. Help me help you kind of thing. Don't make it harder than it needs to be to defend you.
Yeah, I think I'm going to echo with you. I would say, you know what? Can someone just tell me about the internal affairs process? Like when I get hired,
Right.
Someone just tell me what this is all about, because we certainly don't want to be kept in the dark. I can't begin to thank you for both of you sharing this journey that you will remember for the rest of your life. I know that I've gained a friend from you, Sergio. You call me all the time, and I love talking to you. And I've referred people who are going through what you went through, so you become that
Peer
buddy
support.
system, that peer support. Because it's so important. We also need to and I can speak for all of us, that it's a small fraction of the population. So let's just make sure that we don't, let everybody know, like, oh my God, what's happening to Sergio is happening like every day, all day, throughout the state of California. It's very unique. It only happens to certain people. Yeah, some are deserving and some are not. And again, we can do better. So, and Kasey, thank you for hiring me, right? I look forward to, as much as I hate to say this, right? You know where I'm going with this.
The next one.
This won't be the last time, and this is the saddest part. This will not be the last time that we'll have another Sergio. It just happens. And all we ask is for fairness and to be balanced.
100%.
Well, with that, we're going to wrap it up. Let's see. I always forget this. Ring that bell notification. Don't forget to subscribe. Please comment below. We want to hear from you. If you would like to see me break down these police body cams with these crazy Karens and all these traffic stops and people losing their mind, what police work is really like, go to that Marlon report. It's on the YouTube channel. And like always, please be safe out there. And don't forget to go Code 6. Thank you.